And that was a moment in silence in recognition of the events in Indianapolis.
So we had a lot of things going on this week. I think that can cover a lot of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, Indianapolis, Maryland, the several people who've been harmed by various things this week. So just thoughts go out to all of them, and solidarity and everything else.
So hello to Junie in the chat, and of course anyone who may be lurking or watching in the future. Now, see, I kind of wanted to talk about this topic because last week, while I was working, Pumped Up Kicks came up on the radio, but it wasn't the regular edit of Pumped Up Kicks. No, in this edit, every mention of Gun and Bullet was just blanked out, as in there was a second or two of, just dead silence.
So they basically played silence for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Fair point. Radio music censorship is a very well established thing. I have no idea. We grew up in the era. You probably didn't hear it, but we grew up in the era of Eminem and trying to get a deep. Back in the days when you used to have a tape and you were trying to record songs on the radio. Bloody nightmare if you were an Eminem fan.
But yeah. And the thing is, like specifically Pumped Up Kicks, blanking out the words gun and bullet neuters what the song is trying to do.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the song is the cognitive dissonance that you get when you realize, wait, this is a really, really dark topic, but it's being sung so happily. It singing about a topic, like a shooting in such a, happy-go-lucky tone and cadence basically is shining a light on the lackadaisical attitude that Americans specifically show towards these tragedies.
Yeah. I will point out, it's almost, for me looking at it from the outside, dear Americans, before you make a song, one of your unofficial sort of national songs that you play at sports events and shit, please listen to the lyrics and pay attention to what Bruce Springsteen was talking about when he wrote Born in the USA.
Yeah.
Just maybe you don't want to play. I distinctly remember America won a basketball game at the Olympics and they played that song. And I was just like, wow. Well, okay, someone wasn't paying attention.
Well, and obviously, people not getting musical satire is a topic in and of itself. But how many American politicians have used Pink Houses as a campaign song?
Yeah. How many just people in general, how many people do you know who don't realize that Pulp Fiction is a satire?
Yeah.
And that's movies. That's not just music.
Yeah.
But then you get, again, with the whole Springsteen thing, American Idiot, again, another one. How many Americans sing along to that and don't listen to the words? And we have it here in the UK as well. There's a great tradition of satirical and political music in the UK.
Well,
I can't think of any that are not explicit off the top of my head.
When it comes to post 9/11 Green Day political music, I prefer Holiday, personally.
Yeah. But American Idiot's the one that's more well known. That's why I use it as an example. And it is very much people don't pay attention to the words. They get the gist, but not the detail. Which, you know, it's both the melody and the lyrics that make a song, folks.
Yeah.
But when you came to me with this topic, I was very pleased because there's a lot that's happened recently that can fall under this banner, and not just in music. At some point, I will be mentioning the Discord, and
which is actually being caused by an apple.
Yeah, the apple brings Discord. Or not, as the case may be.
I'm
many
sorry.
puns.
It just crossed my mind and I couldn't resist.
This is why I married you. It's also why I may one day smother you in your sleep. I'm teasing, folks. But yeah. The Discord thing is probably something we'll get onto that I'd like to talk about. With reference to calls for an app for AO3, which I mentioned last week, but we'll mention again because it is relevant this time.
Yeah.
And just, I will be very surprised if we don't devolve into a discussion of censorship in general.
Yeah, though I will say, in regards to, you know, specifically corporate, you know, censorship, as opposed to what we've previously covered as in, you know, official government censorship and what I call cultural censorship, you know, official government censorship being, you know, mandated, this content isn't allowed to be released, and cultural censorship being the cultural forces, like, for instance, a church or some other movement telling telling their members and enforcing a culture where they're not allowed to consume X media. Corporate censorship is kind of a muddy topic.
Yeah.
Because, basically we're treading on that blurry line where, you know, it's they own the platform, so technically they're allowed to curate their platform. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm going to bring up Apple. Apple are perfectly entitled to curate their platform and curate what they allow to appear on their app store.
Yes.
But they are a provider of a service. And their service is access to the internet and access to what is on the internet. If they don't want to provide that service without moralizing, without being overbearing to people, they shouldn't provide that service. That's my line. You know, it's like it's the same answer I have for a doctor who says, I don't want to treat gay people, or I don't want to treat a trans person. Well, then you shouldn't be a doctor. It's the line. Your rights stop where mine start. You don't have the right to deny me my rights. Yes. The irony of discussing, we'll get there. We'll wait for you for that one.
I'm just happy letting that sit there for a moment and just basking in the irony.
Yeah, let's just bask in the irony for a moment, and let's just wait a moment to make sure this stream's still running in about 12 seconds time.
Yeah. You've got it up on another tab, right?
I think I've got the chat open, so if it dies, please let us know in the chat. God, the sarcasm dripping from the pair of us right now.
And, you know, just like, you know, radio stations technically, have the right to, you know, deny their platform.
They do pressure from governments and from other areas as well. Remind me about the Wicked Witch in a second. Can I backtrack?
Sure.
I think it's worth both of us stating what our positions actually are on censorship.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're the host. You go first. You
No. See, as the host, I can reserve the right to allow the guest to go first. Well, and we're co-hosts, so.
Okay, cool. So as you all know, I am radically anti-censorship. If you watched the last stream, you'll know this already, where Scummer and I were discussing Asterix and the Scroll.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't believe there's any media in any format that should be destroyed and should not be available for public consumption. However, I reserve the right to consume it critically and to expect that people consume it critically. As I said on the last stream, for me, there is as much a place on the bookshelf for Mein Kampf as there is for Anne Frank's diary, as there is for the Communist Manifesto, as there is for any book you've seen on a banned book list, as there is for any political song, as there is for any film, no matter how gory or gross. If you don't like it, you do not have to look at it. But it has the right to exist, and it has value purely because someone chose to create it. And I absolutely stand by that statement. And that statement has gotten me into trouble in a few places. But I stand by it, absolutely stand by it. It's the one thing I think I agree with the Americans on, absolutely, with their free speech. You absolutely have the right to say it. As long as you are not actively threatening someone, lying about someone, or otherwise aiming to cause actual harm, you have the right to be heard. And I will stand for you. What is it? The Lincoln quote? I don't have to like what you say, but I will kill and die for your right to say it. In a nutshell, basically.
Yeah.
I think I've seen it on the internet claiming it's Lincoln, so that means it could have been anyone.
But
So
I'm pretty sure that people on the internet have attributed "fuck bitches get money" to Lincoln.
Everything's been attributed. See, I want to read the quote from the guy behind Lincoln at the theater. Take your fucking hat off.
Well, actually, the quote from the guy behind Lincoln at the theater was "Sic semper tyrannis."
No comment. But yeah.
And
yes, Scummer, you're right.
Joe.
It's Voltaire. I don't know why my brain went Lincoln. I've probably seen a meme somewhere. But again, you say what you like as long as you're not actively causing harm or trying to cause harm. And to be fair, even with people who are trying to cause harm, cough, Glinner, cough, all these people on Twitter who like a platform, I'd rather they be out in the open where I can combat them. I want to hear what they have to say, because know your enemy. Channel punching bag, know your enemy.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to fight something you can see than it is to wonder about what they're whispering about. Yes, as Scummer put it, the trouble with quotes on the internet is you never know if they're accurate. Attributed to Abraham Lincoln.
So now,
but that's my position. So
now my position is, I am very much anti-censorship. I'm not as stringent as Noodle. See, my opinion, is, the government has no right to restrict what media is produced. And, cultural authorities have no right to restrict what, to enforce culturally what media you are allowed to consume. But I also have what I call my Uncle Ben principle when it comes to, producing media because media does, because media is how we communicate ideas, and ideas are the building blocks of our politics. So when people produce and distribute media, that is a great power. And with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
Can I ask for a clarification? What's your opinion on levels of that power? Because this little stream on the internet, however many viewers, does not have the same power as a politician on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I will ask you to clarify whether you think that both should be held to the same standards of accountability.
Yeah, well, like I said, with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
Okay. Okay. This is a very philosophical topic for me, so I like to get into the nitty-gritty of this.
Yes. Yes. So, yeah. If someone tells you comics are just kid stuff, remember, with great power comes great responsibility is a heavy philosophical topic.
Yes. I do have to point out, and I am amused at the irony that I am the staunchly American style anti-censorship and you are more British style anti-censorship.
Yeah.
So, we've clearly... No, I'm not going to finish that sentence because I was going to say rubbed off on each other, but
this is still a PG-13 rated stream.
It is for the next 3 minutes until I start effing and blinding about something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like fandom. In fandom, fan fiction writers do not have the same responsibilities as canon creators. People on Twitter in fandom do not have the same responsibilities as, different things. So, hi, Jeff. Cool. Just clarifying a few things and making our positions known.
Punching bag now.
No. Channel punching bag is still the channel punching bag.
Yeah. In perpetuity.
Yeah. Unless someone else pops up. I don't think anyone else is going to pop up who can take that crown.
Personally, I have two channel punching bags, personally. The one, I'm not sure if a faceless corporation can be a punching bag.
I don't know. Can you punch a corporation in the face? I mean, under American law, corporations are people. So
okay. So yeah, there are two punching bags. The wizarding world, or
she who must not be named.
She who was the artist formerly known as the creator of Harry Potter. And the Walt Disney Corporation.
Okay, are we going to have a quick side tangent on self-censorship, the fact that we wouldn't name her?
No, because that's a running joke.
Yeah, it is a running joke, to be fair. So we've made our positions clear, and you've arrived just in time, Scummer, to make your position clear on what you think of censorship.
This is the thing that I suppose my position is similar to your guys. As a general rule, I don't like censorship. It's a general rule. I do sometimes have issues with certain people being platformed, shall we say, that I think are potentially harmful. But again, does not platforming these people, is it making the problem go away? And that's the big. I mean, there's, I won't use names, but there's there's been a little bit of an argument over somebody platforming someone recently, that I'm weighed in on. I personally saw the reasons why the reason for platforming was to combat a bad idea. But the flip side of this is this person, to me, wasn't much of an influencer themselves. I didn't necessarily see the net value in it. That's not really a censorship question. That's more of a pros and cons of platforming.
It's not, where are you philosophically on censorship as a concept or as a practice?
Yes, I think my in general, generally speaking, I don't approve of censorship. You know, obviously, I think obviously there's lines. Obviously, as you said, when it comes to like harming people, whether it's causing harm or something like. Now, to me, like a snuff film is not something that should be defended as art.
No, but it still has a right to exist. Just because we don't find value in it doesn't mean anyone else doesn't. My opinion is, if I start applying value judgments to media that other people create, someone's going to start applying value judgments to media that I create. So it's very much a defense thing.
And obviously, I know I made the comment in the chat about the somewhat irony of where we're having this conversation.
That just wins comment of the day. I don't think we're going to top that.
And it's just so people know, Noodle and I have had a couple of our Asterisk streams nuked by YouTube before. What we don't. I've got an idea. We've got an idea what one of them was nuked for. One of the other one was nuked twice. To this day, we still don't know how and why and what we did. I think possibly it was people false flagging, but I've got no evidence that happened.
And I mean, the fact that silencing people by false flagging and using censorship as a weapon, that to me tells me everything I need to know about censorship. But I will say as well, just to make it absolutely clear, punching a Nazi in the face, milkshaking a UKIPper, arguing back and criticising is not censorship. They have the right to say it. I have the right to argue back. I have the right to fight them. And so does anyone else. If you don't like what I say, you've got the right to fight me. Go on, I'm open to it. I'll sit down and have a conversation with you. If you don't like it, you want to deck me at the end of it, go ahead. Although preferably not, because I would rather not have a black eye at the end of it. But, you're entitled to your opinion and everyone's entitled to say what they think. And it is what it is. It's just, I am very much let people say what they want to say. And as long as, if you're willing to accept the consequences of what you're saying, you absolutely go ahead and say it.
And in regards to punching Nazis, another good, it's like, what would Mr. Rogers do? I mean, not Fred Rogers, Steve Rogers.
I was going to say Fred Rogers never wore a red, white, and blue cardigan, I don't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just, I thought it was worth us all just stating our positions on that, because we kind of, you two are moderates and I'm just the radical in the group, which is not much of a change for me, let's be honest.
It's a bit, well, I don't know, it's actually a bit weird for me not to be like the radical in the room, to be honest.
Give you a break.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, see, originally, there was going to be a bit of a Ring Noodle debate.
Yeah, until Ring did some Googling.
Yes. So, because my position is sometimes sometimes some mild censorship can enhance the quality of a piece of media.
Are we talking about censorship of an existing work that is censored post, or are we talking about self-censorship by creators in order to get around a censor, because that's a totally different kettle of fish.
Now, my example for the, for more the first in post, it was the radio edit of Everlast's song "What It's Like." For those of you who aren't aware of the song, it's got a line in the second verse where a woman's going into an abortion clinic, and describing the crowd goes, they call her a sinner, and they call her a killer, and they call her a whore. In the radio edit I heard, the word whore is replaced by a record scratch. Now, I was under the impression that this was this was basically the band had their album version, and then they released a radio edit. Then I did some Googling, and it turns out that the editing was being done by the radio station. So, okay, I'm going to double back a bit because I got ahead of myself. So, my position, under the impression that the band, did the radio edit, was that I preferred the radio edit because replacing the word with the record scratch made it hit harder, at least for me. But turns out that is not the only radio edit. That basically there are as many different radio edits as there are radio stations. And that the song is gets edited more harshly when played as hip hop than it does when played as alternative rock.
Genre matters. I take issue with. I appreciate that if you're playing it in the middle of the day and kids are likely to be listening, we don't want kids repeating that kind of language.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that when you're in a situation where your area is open to kids, and I don't mean kids sneakily pressing I am 18 plus buttons on websites and getting into lanes that aren't them. I don't mean that, because if kids do that and see or hear something that makes them uncomfortable, that's their fault and they need to deal with that. Or they need to go to mummy and daddy and ask for some internet controls because they clearly can't control themselves.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is in a general public space where there are likely to be kids around, I appreciate toning down the language and bearing that in mind. That's a reasonable thing to do.
Of course, I know we touched on this radio censorship. Now, I don't know if this was all radio stations or whether it was just the BBC.
Are you going to talk about the Wicked Witch scummer?
I thought we could get there. I mentioned in the comments earlier, remember what was Christmas #1 in 2009, Killing in the Name by Rage Against the Machine. Yeah. Now, I think, you can understand, but then, of course, this year just gone past, Fairy Tale of New York. Now,
that is a very good song to talk about radio censorship.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I'm not going to say the word, obviously, because it's not a word I particularly like, and because of its connotations, and also I don't want to get Ring stream nuked by saying it.
Yeah. But we all know what you're talking about.
A derogatory slur that is sometimes used at gay people.
It's also.
I have an issue as well with the way that song is censored, the practicalities of it, because the word you're talking about is censored, but literally in the previous line he sings and calls her something that is not nice, and that's never censored. So quite clearly there's a double standard going on, because that's not a word that, if you're going to censor one, censor the other, because they're both slurs to an extent. And let's be reasonable here. But for me, I don't think the song should be censored, and I say that as a queer person.
Yeah.
As a queer, I don't think the song should be censored at all.
Which reminds me, on American radio, "Money for Nothing" by Dire Straits.
You get your money for nothing and your kicks for free.
But have you ever heard the full? Yeah, the full.
Yeah.
Has a couple of lines from the second verse edited out.
I will say that generally speaking, for years though, there's always been a radio version of that.
Yeah.
That right from the start, or the radio and TV, where that line is not in there. I mean, partially because of obviously what it says, but also if you ever listen to the full record, it's about 7 or 8 minutes long, which radio want 4-minute songs. So Dire Straits' "Money for Nothing" was cut down to like 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be for a radio edit, isn't it? That's reasonable because radios have got time things, and that's a practical consideration. I will say though, there is another song, and I can't believe I'm admitted that I listened to this song and reasonably enjoy it. But there's a Nickelback song called "Rockstar," and on British radio, there's a line in that track that goes, "Everybody's got a drug dealer on speed dial," and they silence out the word drug.
But
which is going way too far.
Yeah. Well, actually,
that's a bit. Yeah, I mean, even as I think even if you were a moderate on censorship and you heard that, you'd just be like, okay.
Reading, and hey B, and reading. Well, actually, I really like Rockstar, but I listen to it as a piece of musical satire.
Yes, because that's what it is.
Yeah, it's a brilliant piece of musical satire.
Yeah. It's also not a bad song to bop along to when you're pissed at 2 o'clock in the morning in a nightclub. I don't care what anyone says about hating it. 2 o'clock in the morning, that song comes on, everyone hits the dance floor. That's how that goes. Yeah. It's up there with, Mr. Brightside. Yeah. It's just a song everyone knows.
Yeah. Basically, when it comes to Nickelback, they're kind of a meh band. Aside from Rockstar, they're just kind of meh.
See now the only record of theirs I can tolerate is "Burn It to the Ground." That's the only song of theirs that I can actually tolerate. But I mean,
basically, they don't necessarily they didn't necessarily deserve all their popularity that they had, but they also don't necessarily deserve all the hate. They get.
No, they don't. They're a meme, and that's not fair. Because they are reasonably competent musically. They were able to produce popular music, and some of their lyrics are actually quite.
Yeah.
They're very good at telling a story that maybe the listener doesn't want to hear.
So, I know this is horribly off topic, but there is one brilliant Nickelback meme. It's it's a screen cap of a CNN news story where it says that Nickelback had a higher approval rating than Trump did.
No, that was great.
And it has a caption, and the caption under it says, "Look at this photograph. Every time I see it, makes me laugh."
Yeah. But because we were talking about Fairy Tale of New York City, I'm going to circle back because I did have a point.
Yes.
The Pogues this year literally called someone out on defending the use of that word in the song. Because that person was not an honest actor in the discussion. Yeah. Let's be honest, they were not defending the use of that word in that song because of freedom of speech and expression. They were being a homophobic prick.
Yeah, that's I did see that on Twitter.
Yeah, and they called him out, and they destroyed him. They destroyed him in like one tweet. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Go find it. It's if you scroll down my Twitter far enough, you'll find it because I retweeted it. Do I believe that we have a responsibility to educate people on what those words mean and when they aren't appropriate? Absolutely. Do I believe we should say you may never say this word ever, no matter what? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And that word existed in that song, in that time, and the context it was in for a reason. And you can never, ever forget the context of a media.
Yeah.
There is a reason on our asterisk stream earlier, I was really pissed off at the racist imagery. And that's because it was released in 2015.
Yeah. Or,
by people who should have known better.
Once again, back to, what it's like. They're, in the context in the text is that this is something that's being screamed at this woman.
Yeah. And again, it's not being glorified. It's not being said, oh, this is what you should know. It's a statement of fact, and that happens. And it's something that happens in real life, and art imitates life and should imitate life.
Yeah, and actually, another thing that had me change my mind, about this particular topic, because, that kind of, what it's like was basically my one good example.
I mean, Fairy Tale of New York City is a good example of when censorship is possibly okay.
Was when, but what it's
there's
like,
a whole debate around it. Yeah.
But the songwriter actually is like, most of our songs are really, really tame, but this is such dark material that I felt that we had to use the language that we did.
Yeah. And there is an argument for when you're writing about dark shit, you have a duty to write explicitly about dark shit and not sugarcoat it. If I'm writing a story about someone who's been abused or who has been attacked or who is going through hell in some way or another, I have a duty, even if it's just a fucking little fan fiction, I have a duty to be explicit about that to an extent. But I will say I also have a duty to warn my readers that that's what they're going to be reading about.
Yeah. And
I will always defend trigger and content warnings because they are what allow us to have freedom of expression, because they give people the opportunity to prepare themselves.
Yeah. And for examples of covering dark shit explicitly, if anyone is watching, keeping up with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode 4, Nuff Said.
I haven't seen it yet,
but I have seen
the chance to watch that yet.
Yeah.
Oh, if you want to see an example of how it's done really badly, WandaVision, final episode. Don't get me started.
Yeah.
Don't get me started. You can change the subject fast.
Okay, but episode end of episode 4, beginning of episode 5. Enough said.
Yeah.
Anyways, Excelsior.
Cool. Just because if I get started on that, I will start.
Should get off of Marvel. Otherwise, I'm going to have a bit of fun with that Jordan Peterson controversy as well.
Just the mouse hates trauma survivors.
So, in regards to now, there is a lot to be said about the art of showing without showing.
Yes. Again, because it's my current big fandom, and because Hannibal does this really well.
Yeah.
It's a gory program. It is. But they worked with the censors as they were making it about how to shoot scenes with a lot of blood, scenes with a lot of gore, in such a way to get it past the censors, and it became more artistic for it. And this is something Brian Fuller freely talks about on Twitter and in interviews. And yes, I can see what you're getting at. That show don't tell. Show to an extent. You can insinuate a lot with the right camera angles, the right words, the right sounds. If I turn a camera one way, turn the lights down, and a great one is the controversy around PETA recently and that video that they produced. Everyone thought that owl was in agony because it was pitched in a certain way with the right image, and you can manipulate images in that way to make it horrific without actually explicitly saying it.
Or, the entire career of Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, Hitchcock's another one.
Yeah.
Twice he's been mentioned today.
So, yes. It's amazing how much of our previous streamers are leading to this, really. So actually, shall we then, as you touched on this, shall we go to The Wicked Witch?
I think we should, because that's an interesting one about music and censorship of music. So, a prominent political figure in the UK, a very divisive political figure, passed away of Alzheimer's in old age in a hotel room at the Ritz. Not in an NHS hospital like the rest of us poor sods. Sorry. I'm being biased. Sorry.
Who was rather famous for the fondness she had for milk.
Milk snatcher. Think about it. It rhymes. And she passed away, and spontaneous parties literally happened in the UK. I joined one. I remember. I joined one. She was hated by the working classes. I got that as a pin badge, scummer. And promptly it was done, and there was a national movement to that week. The number one song was a song from the soundtrack of The Wizard of Oz, Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. And there was such a furor about, will the BBC play it? Will the BBC not play it? This is back when the number one was, on Top of the Pops and stuff.
Yeah.
Top of the Pops was still a thing. Yeah. And in the end, they equivocated and they ummed and ahed, and they played like a 10-second clip of it.
They played 10 seconds of a record that's only about a minute long anyway, if that.
Yeah.
And I think I always think there was something fishy about the charts that week, because it currently got to number 2. Now I've reason to believe that it was really number 1, and they just did not want to.
I have a reason to believe that they fudged that.
Quick side note on that: so we say there was the backlash to this by some of the right wingers was to try and get the song "I'm in Love with Margaret Thatcher" to number 1.
Yes.
Not realizing that song is a swipe at Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna try for "I'm in Love with Margaret Thatcher," why not just go the whole hog and go for "Thatcher Fuck the Kids"?
I actually was a little bit of a splitter on this, because I actually think we should have tried to get this Elvis Costello's "Tramp the Dirt" down to number one on that.
You can see the strength of feeling if you're watching this woman. And everyone said, "Oh, it's disrespectful to her. It's disrespectful to the family." Well, if she didn't want to be hated, maybe she should have been a better human being.
Yeah.
And I get it. The family are grieving, and we've had something like this recently as well, because there was a funeral yesterday. And yes, the family are grieving, but that doesn't mean they weren't an old racist, etc. Insert whatever they were. That's problematic about them here.
And let's be honest. Some of the members of the Thatcher family are not exactly.
I think I'm going to go on holiday and get lost in the desert. Let's go get lost in the desert so Mummy can send the special forces to save us.
You can have respect for the family while giving the legacy all the respect it deserves, how little that may be.
The great joke at the time, I think, and it still stays with me, is that on Thatcher, don't bother paying for a state funeral. Just ring up all the miners that she put out of work, give them all a shovel, and they'll get her to hell in about and deliver her to the devil personally. Was the joke.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think they would have done given half a chance.
I remember a few years before she died, was it the actor Ricky Tomlinson actually sort of said about Thatcher, he says, let me tell you, you're not going to need to worry about coal where you're going in a few years.
Exactly.
It's going to be roasting hot.
Roasting hot, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, not a loved figure by certain sections of the community, but also loved by certain sections of the community, people who remember the Falklands, people who are right-wing, people who are Tory, and people who respect her for what she was. And at the end of the day, she was a successful woman in politics, and that's not necessarily to be sniffed at. My issue with her is she pulled the ladder up behind her, and that is what I don't forgive. But she, you know, there was a reaction, just as there was a reaction last week when a prominent member of the royal family passed away. Although that, again, the moralising and the woke points and but his family... I don't do this whole not speaking ill of the dead thing. If you want me to speak well of you when you're dead, give me a reason to. Yeah. And so they tried to censor, and there was a massive furor about the censorship. Because I have circled back. I did get there. I have circled back. And there is regular now. This is something that happens in British media a lot. It happens. There's a famous woman by the name of Mary Whitehouse, and she was a bit like she was very much into her censorship and her family values and things. And she used to call routinely for music to be banned.
Very
things like
religious
Frankie goes,
woman. Very
Frankie
religious
Goes
woman.
to Hollywood. She did it with an Alice Cooper track as well. Did she do it with Skulls Out or another
I
one?
can't remember.
But basically, what happens in the UK is, and you have to understand this, we don't like being told what we can and can't listen to. If you tell us a song is banned, that song will go to number one.
That's
how
again,
this shit works in the UK.
But that was more of a. But again, in a way, though, that was a lot more of the pressure being put on certain companies, and like I said, they went after television, radio, films. I mean, famously, they went after The Life of Brian.
But look how popular that's going to be.
And it did actually, but again, this was more, in a sense, the censorship that film achieved was more government, though, because local authorities had a little bit of, even though they didn't own the cinemas, they had a little bit of a say on what could and couldn't be screened in cinemas within there. So they did successfully intimidate a lot of local councils into pulling Life of Brian from the cinemas.
And we should clarify as well, talking about the whole Wicked Witch thing, the BBC is state-run media in the UK. The BBC is run by the government. It does what the government tells it. You know, when it boils down to it, it will do as the government says. Which is why I think that as well caused the furor that it was not going to be on the BBC, because this is the government saying we can't. And that really... especially because most of the people who wanted to hear it were left-wingers. I think we really got to be in our bonnet about the politics and the validity of censoring that.
And apparently the BBC is a lefty organisation, if you listen to any of these right-wing people.
Yeah, but if you listen to left-wingers, it's a right-wing organisation.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's perfect BBC bias.
Well, this is the whole thing. It's like the whole... like, you know, you'd hear these people say, for years say, the BBC's this horrible blooming lefty platform, blah blah blah, you know, that, and like these. Can I just point out that pretty much everyone who used to say that used to watch Top Gear. Okay, can I just point that out?
I mean, I watched Top Gear, but
I've
never said that.
that went on for years. But I mean, that went on for years, and in case any of those people happen to listen to this as well, no, he wasn't fired over political correctness. He was fired because he punched a work colleague, which you would probably expect to get fired from in any job.
Yeah, although I will say he wasn't fired. Technically, he resigned.
Mm.
No, he was invited to resign.
He was going either way.
Yeah, he was going. That was not in doubt. I don't agree with him physically attacking someone. I think, however, I can understand why he did it, given the situation around it, but it's still not acceptable. It's absolutely not acceptable to lay hands on someone. I don't care what anyone says. And yes,
in any job, you punch a work colleague.
You're out on your ear.
You should be reasonably. It's reasonable to expect your P45 and not in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're a boxer or something, and it's required.
But now, in regards to working with, within guidelines, there's still an argument where that can actually improve the content.
There is, however, I don't give the credit to the censors for that improvement.
Yeah.
The credit there is to the artists because they want to tell a story and they are being hamstrung, so they have to figure a way around it. That is not something that the credit should be given to the censors.
I mean, obviously, we did a whole stream on comic books as a genre, which had a sort of a censorship body that monitored it for decades.
Yeah, that would be my go-to example of it going way too fucking far.
Yeah, because it stifled a lot of storytelling potential that comics have for a long time. I mean, to the point, really, like I said, we got down to it was just the superhero genre that they could do after a while.
Well, and fun fact, the first Marvel comic to be rejected by the Comics Code Authority was one that they were asked to do by the U.S. government.
Yes, it was over it was over depictions of drugs.
Yeah, and and they specifically asked Marvel to do an anti-drug comic.
Yeah.
Which just, I think, says it all. Also, can I point out, you cannot tell me that there is not a direct line from censors saying no extreme violence in comics to memes today that say, oh, Daredevil punched someone in the head, but let's not tell him he killed someone. Like, quite clearly, the reason superheroes aren't seen to kill people and we don't see blood in comic book movies and things is because of that history of censorship of blood and gore. I would draw that as an outsider looking in. That's what that looks like to me. That looks like the censor said you can't show them killing people because they're good guys. So we'll hit them, we'll break their spines, and just not tell him that bit. And we'll hand wave it.
It's also a thing about how you want to have a good stock of bad guys that you can keep using, and if the hero kills all their bad guys, but I'm talking about when they kill, stunt grunt number 3.
Yeah.
And it's quite clearly hand waved.
Yeah.
Well, it's the whole Batman. I will not kill except every time he does.
It's like Batman doesn't. It's the Doctor doesn't carry a gun, but in several episodes he commits genocide.
Yeah.
Like, he's been trying to commit genocide since the 60s when he went up against the Daleks for the first time.
Batman didn't mean to kill. Batman meant to.
Seriously.
Damn it.
I can.
Batman meant to maim and seriously injure.
Yeah. And it is that.
Yeah.
And it's Dobby in Batman's voice. I love it. But it's that, and that's what there's that great scene. If you skipped 9, we can't be friends. I'm sorry, because Chris Eccleston has the opportunity to destroy. Is it the Daleks or the Cybermen? I think it's the Cybermen.
No, the Cybermen didn't show up until 10.
It was Daleks.
It was
And
like he found the last Dalek.
Yeah, and this Dalek is taunting him, and he's ready to kill this Dalek, and he's saying, and the Dalek says to him, "So what are you, Doctor? Killer or coward?" And he steps back and he says, "Coward any day." And that was such an important moment for that character.
Yeah.
Because it showed a level of humanity that really wasn't present in previous Doctors as much.
Because I mean, that's even going back to like Tom Baker. There was the whole thing of them, and he had a chance to kill the Daleks right at their birth, and then he didn't.
Because it's the "would you kill Hitler" argument, isn't it?
Yeah.
We all say we would, but could you really kill a baby? Like, but, knowing what you know now.
Like, but when it comes to like, here's like the gist of my like small doses argument.
Go on.
So, and we're going to have a little history about cartoons in the US. So, late 70s, late 60s in through the 70s, we have essentially the Hanna-Barbera era where cartoons are, heavily censored and thus kind of forgettable. Then we hit the 80s, where Reagan comes in and says, you can do whatever. But then all of the cartoons essentially become half-hour-long action figure commercials.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then it kind of gets reined back in the 90s, where we see somewhat of a golden age of animation, where we get stuff like Batman the Animated Series, we get the Animaniacs, we get people who are doing more with the medium than what was done before.
Yeah. And also, I think it's obviously starting in the 80s, but you think, The Simpsons even, and things like South Park, and then eventually Family Guy,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of weird to look at The Simpsons now and think of that as being a very subversive show, but it absolutely was when it started.
I think that like the analogy for me to use is it isn't really that censorship was a beneficial force. It was more like, what growth can you have without something to strive against?
I'm going to speak because, but is there not an argument for, after the censorship was removed by Reagan, writers just going a bit mad for a bit? And that's understandable. And then they begin to develop their own code of conduct around it, because they begin to realize that actually they've lost something important and they've lost the imagination, and they've just become shills for corporate, as you said, action figures. That is a relevant point, because it's like with kids. It's, again, in America, kids can't drink till they're 21. What happens when Americans turn 21?
Yeah.
Like, stereotypically, they go out and get plastered. They go to Florida for the summer, and they just frigging fuck shit up, because they haven't learned to moderate themselves. And there is always that period of growth from being limited to learning to self-moderate, and you have to allow for that in anything.
Yeah. Though
it's just a thing. Although I will say it's not just Americans who do that; other people do that too.
Yeah.
But Americans is the one everyone knows about.
Though, arguably, you could also just say that the problem with the 80s era of animation was just capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a number of like cartoons I loved as a kid were specifically made because to sell toys. And I think Mattel, sort of started that with He-Man.
Hey, listen, were we talking about doing Pirates of the Caribbean at some point?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to drop that in there as if it's not totally related at all.
I'm definitely, we're definitely doing Pirates of the Caribbean in July to coincide with the release of Jungle Cruise.
Right. So that's definitely a franchise that was created to sell tickets to Disneyland and that ride.
Yeah.
You know, definitely Baby Yoda exists because kids need a soft toy at Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, it's a thing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in a capitalist society, it's always going to be a thing. And we're going to have to accept it. Should there be limitations on it? I think we're at the point where we can say yes without that being a censorship.
Yeah.
Because what I think is lacking, and in all of this, whenever you're talking about censorship, people always say, oh, think of the children, think of the people who don't understand, think of the people who won't engage critically. Well, that's not a problem with the media. That is a problem with your education system.
Yeah.
Fix your education and educate your people to engage with this stuff critically, and then they won't respond negatively. It's the same, you know, what's his name had a copy of Catcher in the Rye after he, you know, blew someone away after he blew Lennon away.
Mark Chapman.
Yeah,
but
you know, it's if you teach these people to engage critically, they're not going to imitate it. They're not going to behave in that manner.
But
education is the tool to all of this.
But my pastor said that we can't let them public institutions indoctrinate us.
Does your pastor have an education degree? You know, I am very.
He's a man of God.
So.
Yeah.
God would drown you if you pissed him off. Forgive me if I don't really care too much about his opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. This whole thing. Yeah, I think we do that as well. We put people on pedestals when we shouldn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
At the end of the day, creators for all media are human.
Yeah.
They're gonna fuck up.
And since I already, brought out the stereotypical Southern drawl, I will say, with all this talk about woke cancel culture,
there is no such thing as cancel culture.
Or woke censorship. I've only seen one group, one large group consistently hold book burnings.
Looking at
you, evangelicals.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is though with cancel culture? I get it because we get these big names coming out: Rowan Atkinson, John Cleese, and I don't necessarily agree with the specific reasons, but they have a point that actually. But cancel culture, channel punching back. Cancel culture, okay. What you are entitled to create whatever the fuck you want. You are not entitled to demand that I look at it. You are not entitled to demand a space on my platform or in my remit. And if there is a corporation that doesn't want to platform you, you're not entitled to demand that. Go make your own platform. If people want to listen to you, they'll find you.
Yeah,
but cancel culture is becoming. I can see why some people in the media are becoming concerned by it because there is a tendency to overreact, and there is a tendency to start throwing around wild accusations with less evidence than, you know, you'd find in the footwell of a teenager's car. But, you know, it's when someone does something consistently and it's a behavior pattern, people are entitled to disengage. People are entitled to criticize. But I do draw the line, and as I said right at the start, I draw the line at threats, harm, harassment, things like that, because at the end of the day, you wouldn't like it done to you.
Yeah, I think that's as good. A lot of what you were talking about there. It's probably a good way of segueing into YouTube, because that as a platform, everything you just described sort of is kind of relevant there. I did say earlier, this is the irony. We're having this conversation on YouTube. Now, sometimes it will, like I said, out and out nuke streams just because it's algorithm. You know, if it's a word they don't like, if there's a word they don't like, and you know, it can get you instantly demonetized if your channel is monetized to begin with, and then they supposedly have this manual review process, and then that funny, you know, when it's like a 90-minute stream, and then you get a response back in 5 minutes saying we've done a manual review, and it was like, no, you haven't. Here's a good. I mean, YouTube's got its own little ways as well, you know, of removing people, if not removing the content as well, but removing your chances of your content being seen in the algorithms. And that certainly happens to a lot of people, happens to quite a lot of people in the atheist community, happens to a lot of people in the debunking community, because now on one side, that, like, for example, one side, YouTube isn't wanting to like promote flat earthers or whatever on their channel, in their algorithms. I get that. However, the downside of that, of course, is the people that are combating that idea are having the same problem. I mean, there's a few people who do manage to break through that hump, like Simon Dan or something, for example. But a lot. This is the thing. A lot of the YouTube's a very interesting one, I think, that we could talk about here.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I was talking about that, and I was talking about Twitter. So I think it's something that goes across social media platforms.
Yeah.
Because what we find is, and the thing is, we're in a culture, and I think this is what the true cancel culture is. We are in a culture where being woke or having the moral high ground, or attempting to claim the moral high ground, even at the expense of victims, which does happen, and victims get davoed all the time on social media, has become the new norm. And if there's anything that's cancel culture, it's that. If someone's been the victim of something and they lash out or they defend themselves, that doesn't make them the attacker. The concept of self-defense is just gone. And as someone who's been through this recently, it's just gone. It's just not there.
Yeah.
And it's with YouTube, I can see what YouTube's trying to do. They have this set of words, these algorithms that just stop at anything in its tracks. They think nip it in the bud. But all they're doing exactly the same thing. They are forcing people who use this platform to word it in different ways, to start using dog whistles.
Yeah.
I mean, to an extent, you could argue, yes, it's a running joke on this channel. But to an extent, you could argue that our channel punching bag is a dog whistle. It's a dog whistle for being anti-turf, being pro-trans rights. That's what that is. Now, it's a positive dog whistle because we're making a point, but it's still a dog whistle. And, everyone sits up and looks when we say it because they know what we're talking about, but we've got plausible deniability. And so all YouTube has done is done exactly what censorship of comics has done and forced us to be more vague about it. And the problem is when you start being vague, you start to arguments and debates and discussion breaks down because you need to have a set understanding of what words mean. You can't do that when dog whistles are involved. You just can't.
Yeah.
Because if two people are arguing over the meaning of a word, they're not arguing over what that word actually implies. And that's the problem. It's semantics.
Yeah.
Now, I get YouTube has a responsibility as a corporation. They provide media content to children. That's why, I don't think any of us have a problem with when we create a video, clicking the button that says, this is not suitable for children, if it's not going to be suitable for children. None of us have a problem with giving trigger warnings or content warnings or saying, there's certain things we're not going to say or do or show. Because that's our personal opinion. We have the right not to show it and say it and do it, other people have the right to do it if they wish to.
Yeah,
and that's my opinion on it.
We do that on we do that obviously on some of our Asterisk streams because of the artwork. Now, we had to show it to a degree today because it was relevant to the plot point, and we had to. And then there was stuff that needed to be said about it. I mean, but there are sort of two reasons going on there. Sometimes is that is also being conscious in the back of your mind that you show this stuff too often,
and it becomes normalized.
It becomes normalized, but there's also that little thing. I don't know whether it's with you, but certainly in the back of my mind of we could get nuked by YouTube over this. Because that YouTube could do that.
It doesn't come into the back of my mind, to be honest, when I think about it, because YouTube is the least of my priorities when I'm talking about things like that. And if they want to nuke us for criticizing it, we have a valid argument to get that stream back. Whether we would or not is a different kettle of fish. But in that sense, it's not a priority for me. But I see what you mean. And I think for me, I also find when we've shown those images on our stream, Scummer, yay or nay, what do you think? We have had very important, very useful discussions around it. So we haven't just shown it for the sake of showing it. We have engaged critically. I will tell you that any time, just to say that, anytime that stuff comes up in the books, okay, we warn for it,
and especially if it's something that's relevant to plot. We have a conversation before we even start streaming about how much do we want to show here? Do we need to show this to make a point? Now, if it's just like a couple of panels with the pirates or whatever that are not that relevant to the plot, we'll skip past it because it's
it's the pirates.
They are the comic relief. They're just the sideline. But when it's narratively important, we will address it and we will address it head on. And I think that's fair. We are engaging in self-censorship to an extent. And I'll be honest, if I was doing it totally on my own as a mixed race person, I would have shown more of it. But every single time I did it, you'd have heard the same condemnation, the same anger, the same annoyance. I appreciate that Scummer doesn't want to show it because Scummer is white and doesn't want that baggage, which is fair as well. But do I think that white people shouldn't be allowed to discuss race? No. And I know people in the YouTube community are going to have issue with me saying that. I don't think white people shouldn't be allowed to discuss race. What I do think is that white people don't have the right to talk over people of colour about race. Or to exclude people of colour from the table. That's my line. And, everyone can bring something to the table, but everyone should have an equal voice. And this is the thing with YouTube and with all social media, their policies are applied very lackadaisically. And this is an issue for me from a corporate perspective for them. If you have a corporate policy, it should be applied across the board. It's clearly not. And when it's not, that either means that you don't have the staff to keep up with it, in which case you need to hire more staff or downsize, or you don't. It's all talk and no action. in which case it shouldn't be a policy because you quite clearly don't believe in it.
Yeah.
So just state your position and be straight with people about what you think and what you believe. And, you know, and then I have no argument with you. If people want to be on a platform that supports, you know, right-wing Christians and racists or whatever, you know, that's what Parler's for. I have no argument with the existence of Parler. I'm not on it. I don't want to go anywhere near it. I have no argument with the existence of it. It's a platform, and they've chosen to platform that for a reason.
Yeah. And then
that's their decision.
And then of course there's obviously the thing of the, you know, people like Apple or whoever or Google removing that from.
You saw exactly where I was going with
this. So we are going to transition into the Discord of Apple.
Yes, the Apple of Discourse. The Apple Discourse. So there's a couple of things that are relevant to this. First of all, this week, maybe last week, can't remember, time weird. Apple decided that they were going to. They have a policy of not putting not safe for work things that are, you know, pornographic and things on their platform. They are perfectly entitled to do that. That's fine. That's what you agree to when you agree to use their platform. You know, in the same way, if I agree to use a platform that says I'm not allowed to swear, I probably ain't going to be using that platform because I can't help myself. You know, it's a thing. You go where you're welcome. But they decided that they were going to tell Discord that Discord had to do something to essentially make it harder to view not safe for work channels on the Discord app when it's on an Apple device. And Discord basically said, go whistle. Do one.
Yeah.
To which Apple responded, okay then, so from now on, no Apple user in the Discord app that's on Apple is allowed to view a not safe for work channel, regardless of whether they have it active or not, regardless of their age or anything else. They just applied a blanket ban. For the record, this is why we don't want an app for AO3. Like, because the minute Apple gets involved, they try and control the content on an app. AO3 is staunchly anti-censorship for a reason. Its goals and aims are not even on nodding terms with the Apple terms and conditions. There's a reason I'm an Android user. I can root my phone and put on whatever I want if I want to. You know, I don't because I'm happy enough with Android. But anyhow, Google came out and said, okay, any apps that are sold on the Google Play Store are going to be censored. I would be leaving the Android platform so fast the head would spin. Because that's not what I believe in, and I didn't agree to that when I signed up. And there's a lot kicking off, and it's still ongoing, and there's blames being thrown about. But this is important because corporations censoring adult media in adult spaces that adults are accessing is wrong.
Yeah.
We are grown-ass adults. We have the choice of what we want to view. You know, if I want to go back and watch that movie that I heard rumors of in high school, you know, The Human Caterpillar, I have the right to go watch that. I have the right to be grossed out and sickened from what I've heard of it because I've never actually seen it. But I have the right to go watch it if I want, and there's a platform that will sell it to me. No company has the right to tell me I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think when you get to the point where companies are saying you can't do this on our platform after you've signed up and paid them, there's an issue. They should be transparent and upfront, and they should apply across the board.
Yeah.
And this is just my rant on Apple in general, because Apple does it a lot, and Apple is really restrictive about what's there. There's a reason there's not a Pornhub app on Apple. It's because they don't want one. You know, there's a reason that you will hit a child safety warning on an Apple phone and you won't on an Android phone. Like I remember I got my phone here and I signed up with a new phone company, and you'll remember this, Ring. I realised it wouldn't let me access Archive of Our Own. It wouldn't let me access 18 plus material. on my data plan. And I rang the company and I kicked off. I said, who the hell do you think you are? I pay my bill. I am a grown-ass adult. You had no right to apply this without my consent. Remove it now. And the guy had the audacity to ask me why I wanted it removed. And I told him outright, I said, because I want to look at porn and it's none of your goddamn business. You're providing a platform. There's nothing in your terms and conditions that says I can't do this. So I'm paying for a service. Give me the service I'm paying for.
Yeah.
And yet when I rang and said that on mine, they asked me why I wanted it. When Ring rang and said on theirs, when they were in the UK and had a UK phone and we were with the same network, oh, yeah, fine, no problem. Didn't even ask. Just, yeah, okay, no problem. And there's an issue as well, because AO3 largely caters to the AFAB female queer community as well. And there's definitely a sexism issue there. But that's kind of an aside. Yeah. The reason I'm ranting about all of this, Twitter does it. We've all seen examples of Twitter not applying their code of conduct fairly. Facebook
Wizard NASCAR.
Mm-hmm. Facebook does it. How many times have you seen gore or, there was a thing a few years back where people were sharing videos of people being beheaded and shit on Facebook and they were being left up. But say the word boob or show a nipple and you'll get your account suspended. Like, it's nonsense. You either apply the same rules to everyone or you say, okay, it's a free-for-all. And you make your software 18 plus. And you demand age verification by card or by showing ID or whatever in order to access it. Because you can't... I'm as an adult, I have certain freedoms that I hold very dear. If I wanted mummy and daddy to stop me doing something on the internet, I would go to mummy and daddy and say, please, put a firewall up. I'm not a child. I'm an adult. And I appreciate being treated like one. And that's why I'm very loyal to companies that stand up for that. And there is a move towards corporate censorship. For me, like, for example, Trump being removed from Twitter, I don't think he should have been removed. I don't think he should have been forced off. Was he doing damage? Yes. Was he lying? Yes. Was he breaching their terms and conditions? Yes. That's why he should have been removed. He should have been removed because he was breaching the terms and conditions he'd agreed to, not because he came from a particular political bent.
Well,
or because of a particular political axe they had to grind. Because if they had applied their policies fairly, Trump would have been kicked off Twitter much sooner. But quite clearly, there was a political axe there somewhere.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
Can I just finish?
Okay.
Have the actual backbone to stand up for the principles you claim. If you are not willing to go up against the president of the United States and tell him, fuck off my platform, you don't have the right to deplatform him when he loses an election either. Have some honor, have some backbone, stand up for what you believe in, or just say you don't believe in anything and be done with it. And that's, that's my opinion. That's why I'm so staunchly anti-censorship, because I will stand and fight for that opinion.
And I'm gonna come in with a little asterisk. So, the way I understand it, Twitter didn't ban Trump during his presidency because it was a matter of public record. But what happened was it wasn't Trump losing the election that got him kicked off Twitter. It was January 6th.
Yeah. However, January 6th was not the first time that he had incited violence.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So why wasn't he kicked sooner? That's my point. If you're going to apply a policy, apply it fairly and consistently. Otherwise, your policy is not worth the paper it's written on and it can go whistle. That's it.
Well,
you know me, I'm a very black and white person.
Yeah.
I'm very much, if you're going to do something, do it and believe in it. Because if you don't believe in something, there's no point in doing it.
Yeah.
And if you believe in it, you will do it right.
Well, I mean, we have someone who is tweeting the location of the speaker during the attack, still sitting in Congress.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, that to me is an incitement to violence. That is a targeted threat. And that categorically goes against Twitter's terms of use.
Yeah.
That should have been immediately removed.
Isn't that person still on Twitter?
I think she is.
Okay. So, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
How is that right? That account should have been immediately shut down when that happened, if they applied their terms and conditions fairly.
Yeah.
Oh! Yeah, she is.
It's one of the...
okay. And just last hour, she used her Twitter to badmouth someone attending a BLM protest, a fellow congressman or fellow congresswoman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, using Twitter to badmouth people, bitch about people, we all do it. We all do it. None of us are innocent. But there's a difference between bitching about someone and harassing someone. There's a difference between making a threat and just grumbling.
The specific tweet is, why is Maxine Waters traveling to a different state trying to incite a riot? What good can come from this?
Okay, so what you've done there, you've provided private information about her movements, which breaches Twitter's terms and conditions.
Yeah.
Because that now constitutes a viable threat. The fact that you're talking about it and your followers are known to dislike her constitutes an incitement to violence or threat. The fact that you're saying this unsolicited constitutes harassment. This is under Twitter's terms and conditions. So why is that account still active?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? If anyone else did that, if you or I went on and suddenly said, X is in such and such a place, and aren't they a nasty piece of work? That would be a threat. That would be harassment, and we'd be suspended for that. So why aren't they?
I will say, on the flip side of that, if they kick this person off of Twitter.
Oh,
Ring and I couldn't have done a 2-hour stream ripping all of her tweets to fucking shreds.
Ring is horrified, so I'm not. So yeah.
Yeah.
What have they done?
Okay. So.
Oh, I'm looking. Hold on. I've got the same page up there. Yeah. Let's have a look.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm gonna do some clicking and zooming before I share. This is becoming an impromptu Twitter stream.
Yeah. But we are talking about censorship and it is relevant. So yeah.
So this is what made me
gasp.
I have this right in front of me now. Yeah.
Okay, that's a dog whistle.
Yeah.
That is a racist dog whistle, and if that rolls up your timeline, please report it.
Yeah.
Because while I do appreciate that sometimes corporations can't monitor shit like Twitter. It's massive. You would need, and the algorithms aren't perfect, and I do allow for that. But when it's there and it's reported, Twitter should act. And that's a racist dog whistle, and that is quite clearly, a call to harassment. She's tagged someone in that. She's quote tweeting. That's classic harassment. And it's not, and it's against Twitter's terms and conditions. And you agreed to Twitter's terms and conditions when you signed up. And that's it. That's If I went to a website that said, you can harass people all you want, and we don't care, and cool, whatever, then have at it. I wouldn't say a word against you saying it. Yeah. On the basis of harassment. I would call you out for being a racist bitch, but that's a totally different kettle of fish. It's two different issues here. And that's the thing. People conflate the issue of anti-censorship with what people are actually talking about.
Yeah.
And it's two separate issues. Anti-censorship is not, mutually exclusive to racism isn't something that should exist. Transphobia isn't something that should exist. Bigotry isn't something that should exist. Those are not two mutually exclusive ideas. And it really annoys me when that happens.
Yeah, speaking of, complaining about censorship when you're not being censored.
Who's tweeted? Channel punching bag?
Nope.
Lauren.
That's just such a weak ass frigging. No, your tweets are not being hidden from your followers, darling. Twitter has been getting repeated denial of service attacks for the last 48 hours. Pay attention.
Says someone who's got 12,000 likes on a tweet and almost
nearly 2,000
retweets. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
seriously, Lauren Boebert, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And that's just playing the victim, that's just such a... But yeah, Twitter has been... And again, when there's technical issues, I can understand that. Shit happens.
Yeah.
But if you believe in a policy, you should implement it fairly and consistently across the board. And if you don't believe in a policy, you shouldn't have that policy.
Yeah.
And I'm very clear on that. Now, because we were talking about it last stream, I'm going to bring it up. If you have information that you release and you put people in danger by doing that, you are an asshole. Did you have the right to release that information? Yes. Oughtn't you have considered the lives you were putting at risk first and maybe considered censoring certain parts that were sensitive and would put lives at risk? Absolutely yes. You have a duty of care. Everyone has a duty of care in what they say and do.
And that applies down to anyone from who we were talking about in the last one, Julian Assange, right
through to this woman on Twitter talking about someone crossing state lines.
Or right down to any arsehole who doxes someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely have no time for doxers.
And I understand sometimes that happens by accident and then people immediately realise they fucked up and delete the post or whatever. That shit happens. I understand that. And sometimes people accidentally screw up on that stuff. But yeah, doxers fucking fuck off.
Look, I've been doxed twice. Okay. Once by TERFs and once in fandom. Neither of them were for anything appropriate. But do you know what both of these things had in common? They threw around heinous accusations about me with no evidence whatsoever. They dogpiled me. They silenced me. They attempted to destroy my life, and then they claimed to be the victim because I defended myself.
Well,
it's a classic tactic.
We talked off air last night, and I did mention I've been doxed by a group called Red Watch in the past.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very, very. That is a far right hate group. I'm going to be as polite. That's about as polite as I can say about them.
Yeah. To me, doxing is a threat.
Yeah.
It carries a distinct threat. Remember, a couple of years back, I called out a TERF on Twitter who was a councillor for the Labour Party and asked who the hell she was and why she thought she had the right to speak for the Labour Party when she was being a TERF. Because that was not Labour Party policy at the time under Corbyn. The policy was acceptance. And her people came for me in droves, and it lasted like a week. Must have been like a week, remember, Ring?
Yeah.
And they went and they found my fan fiction account. And because I'd read fan fiction, now don't forget, I've had this fan fiction account over 15 years since I was a teenager. And because I happen to have an old bookmark in my fan fiction account of underage characters in a, explicit situation, they called me a paedophile. And then it turned out that I didn't actually have that in my bookmarks and the website was glitching that day. But then from that, they then went from my Twitter and found my Facebook. From my Facebook, tried to find my employer and contacted my employer and tried to accuse me of being a paedophile to my employer. And that's what they did. I went into work the following day terrified I was going to get the sack. And you know what my manager said to me? Oh, you didn't go out of your way to link yourself with the company, so we don't care. You're a grown-ass adult. Say what you like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm very lucky in that sense because I'm unionized and protected, and I work for a company that understands I have my own opinions. But, not everyone has that luxury. That was a valid threat. That could have destroyed me financially. That could have left me homeless. That could have caused... If that kind of attitude had have gotten around where I live, I'd have been pushed off the top of a block of flats.
That actually brings up another form of corporate censorship, though, in a sense, and that is employers
and social media policies.
Social media policies. Now, I have to be a little bit careful. I could. Generally, as long as I'm not attacking anyone I work with or bosses at my work, whatever. And obviously, unless don't say something that's really ridiculously beyond the pale, I'm generally okay. But again, is that in a sense another form is that a form of corporate censorship? I
think it is because I pointedly don't mention where I work on Twitter for a reason because we've all seen what I get like on Twitter. I mentioned my university, but my account's locked since then because I know, I'm now moving into a position where I have to be careful about what I say. But that's a form of censorship as well. I've seen people lose places at university and stuff because they've been doxxed. Because the university just didn't want the hassle of dealing with all the people calling their HR department repeatedly.
Yeah.
And that's not fair either. You should stand by people who make a stand and say something. Now, I'm not saying if someone comes out and says something bigoted, you should stand by them at all. And I absolutely understand that. If I went on Twitter now and started ranting and raving about things that definitely go against my company's policy on inclusion and acceptance and equality.
Yeah.
And then put on those same tweets, and I work for such and such, and this is, I would absolutely expect to get the sack because then I'm putting words into the mouths of a corporation that I have no right to speak for. Yeah. But if you're keeping your life, your social media life, and your life separate, and people dox you, that's not your fault.
Yeah.
And I believe a decent employer should stand by you.
Yeah.
Because you've given them, your work hours. And This
is why I won't. This is why, certainly as far as YouTube goes, mainly Twitter. I might occasionally talk. Yeah, I don't even really talk about work on Facebook. I'm in like a Facebook group with like work colleagues, but I'm very rarely am I ever active in there. But then I'm not that active on Facebook, to be honest. These days, I used to be terrible for being on Facebook all the time, but I'm not as active on it. I try to keep my work and whatever very separate from what I do in terms of social media. And even in times where I've actually wanted to be able to talk publicly about something, like if there was a dispute with a union or something, I've kind of come to the conclusion I would be running a risk if I was to talk about that publicly.
Yeah. So, for example, in the news this week, an emeritus professor at the University of Leicester criticised them on social media, and they threatened to remove his honorary status.
Mm.
That's wrong. He has a right to state an opinion. And because he was criticising the university, but he still earned his degree. He still worked for them for decades. That's that. Now that the University of Leicester is going through all kinds of things at the moment. It's a major thing, and they're targeting and victimising union members.
I will say absolutely. If you use a social media platform to harass a work colleague, or even to spout something really, really hateful about your bosses or something, you kind of. I won't. I would say there was a work colleague of mine who said something about managers, which was not very flattering. I'll just say that much. Now he wasn't sat, but he was pulled in the office the next morning about that.
Yeah, like I'm in a Facebook group. I work in a call center. You all know this. I work for a fraud department for a bank, and that's all you'll hear from me about where I work. And there's a Facebook group called Call Center Problems, and this group has like hundreds of thousands of members from across the planet. And basically, they go on and complain about customers, but you never give the name of the customer. You never give private information. And, you know, they'll complain about management and things in very general terms. And it's a vent group. That's what it's for. Occasionally there's memes and things. Do you know who told me that Facebook group existed? My manager on my first day working in the job. Yeah. And told me, yeah, go join it. We're all in it. It's a laugh. It's fun. Just be careful what you say because it can come back on you. And that's fair enough. Do you know what I mean? There's limits and lines.
Yeah.
Someone insults me online and I have to work with them the next day. Yeah, it crosses over into real life. And when it starts to impact real life, that's when companies have a right to get involved when it's their company name on the line.
I mean, I've got to a point with someone where I blocked them and then they tried to use another account to get around the block. This is a work colleague.
Block dodging.
And I had to and I told him in no uncertain terms that if he bothered me one more time on social media, I have screenshots of everything.
Taking it to management.
It won't just be a quiet word in their ear saying, tell him to back off. It will be an official complaint that they have to deal with.
Yeah, because that's harassment.
I had screenshots of everything.
That's harassment. If you started changing the where you went to that way you got to work, or crossing the road when you saw him coming at you and he followed you, that's the equivalent of what he's doing online. I will say as well, blocking someone is not censoring them.
Yeah, I
will say that people are entitled to say what they like. They are not entitled to make you listen to them.
Yeah.
And I don't care what they say. I have hundreds of people blocked on Twitter. I block liberally. I use Red Block. I use blockchain, because I just can't deal with that shit. I don't want to deal with it. You want to call me names and have a go at me. Have fun. I don't want to hear it. I don't have to look at this. I don't have to listen to your accusations. I don't have to give them the time of day. You can say what you like, but I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear you wittering on again about the latest nonsense in your life. And I block for lots of different reasons. I block because people bore me. I block because people annoy me. I block because people have had an argument with me and haven't let it go. I block because people are harassing. There's any number of reasons to block. You are perfectly entitled to curate your own experience online. That is not censoring anyone.
Yeah.
Equally, people are entitled to block me, and I respect that block. Someone blocks me, I'm not going to go looking for them after the fact. End of discussion. That's it. As far as I'm concerned, a block is basically you saying you're dead to me. Right, done. End of discussion. I'm a grown-ass adult. I can take that.
Now,
you don't matter that much to me.
Now, one last quick topic before we go into shilling and such.
Yep.
Dr. Seuss.
I don't think the book should have been pulled. I think the book had the right to exist. I think that it was a massive overreaction and that the book should be taught in context of when it came out and what it was. And yes, it's not appropriate for children anymore, but that doesn't mean it's not appropriate to be published and propagated.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, now, and I do think people need to be clear on what happened there, because there's this big thing. There's this big outroar. Oh, they cancelled it. Now that it's as if they think that all these books that have been previously published have been destroyed. No, that's not what happened. They edited this for the next publishing is what has happened. So people need to understand that, which is their, I suppose technically it is their right to do that. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from as well, though, Noodle. did it really need to be? You know, but I think I think in a way possibly more of a business decision. I think more than they still want to be able to sell this to children. I think I believe is part of the motivation behind that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're going to stop publishing Seuss, and I will say this categorically, you shouldn't be publishing the old Asterix books either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
And that was the comparison I made at the time.
Yeah.
Because the Asterix books are far worse than anything in Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, Asterix or any old Asterix or Tintin books, you know.
Even the modern ones, for Christ's sake, as we saw earlier today.
As we said today, that it's like we're like, yeah.
So, I do have a bit of a theory about what the real motivation was. You know, because books fall out of publication all the time without any kind of fanfare. So I'm thinking that they made a press release about, you know, because all the ones that were pulled for editing were the lower selling ones, the ones hardly anyone's heard about.
Capitalism.
Yeah. I'm very certain that they released that bit to spark outrage and drive up sales of Dr. Seuss books.
Yeah. And there is this thing of there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's it does actually, it very well, you could be right there. I think it very well could have been a publicity stunt.
Yeah, to an extent. However, what I will also say is that's also a problem.
Yeah.
Because all publicity stunts do is drag out the crazies.
Yeah.
And what happens then is the crazies take over the discourse, and those of us who actually have a set opinion on this, whether we're moderates or radical as I am, get lost in, you know, you can't hear us over the screaming of the racists and the bigots.
Yeah.
And that's a problem as well, because I'm radically anti-censorship. People assume that means I'm a racist and a bigot and this and that and that, and quite clearly I'm not. I like to think I'm not. And I like to think if I ever did or said anything racist or bigoted, I would be called out and called out hard.
I find it very weird how the right how it's become like this narrative that the right wing are the arbiters of, you know, the champions of free speech and anti-censorship.
Yeah, like for decades and decades, there was a left-wing issue, and now the right wing have taken it over.
Yeah.
Well, they've been allowed to take it over, but yet, if anyone thinks that the right do not engage in cancel culture and censorship of their own, then you're insane, quite frankly, because they still do.
Which reminds me of when a certain pastor was gifted a certain history book and decided to burn it live on Twitter without reading it.
I didn't see that.
It's from a while back. It's my favorite needling target, Greg Locke.
Greggy Poo.
Yeah.
Mm.
He was gifted the founding myth, you know, which lays out the case that no, America wasn't designed as a Christian nation.
Andrew Sadel's book, is it?
Yeah.
The guy from Freedom from Religion.
Yeah. Pastor Greg Locke was gifted that book, and instead of, you know, reading it or anything, he just burned it live on Twitter.
Look, burning books for me is... I largely don't care if you burn a book, with a caveat. I expect you to have read it first. If you read it and your review of it is this book requires burning, cool. Read it first.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a great meme that goes around once in a while that a school book club were reading Twilight.
Yeah.
And they were asked to produce a review for the school newspaper. And the review turned out to be a single photograph of the book hanging by a string from the ceiling with a wooden stake through it. This is an appropriate response. It's a review.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amusing, and it's great, and it's cool. At least they read it first. If they'd have said, okay, well, there's this book, and everyone hates it, and people are bad-mouthing it, so we're just going to trash it, and we're going to set it on fire, I'd have had a problem. Like,
yeah.
I heard all the nastiness about 50 Shades of Grey. I knew most of the arguments against 50 Shades of Grey, but I didn't trash it until I'd actually read it myself. And I needed bleach for my eyes afterwards and for my hands as well, because something like statistically 98% of copies of those in libraries have got like human bodily fluid on them. So, you know, wear gloves if you borrow it from a library.
Or some libraries rent digital copies.
I don't want to rent anything that is capable of being handled hands-free when it's supposedly erotic, because people don't wash their hands when they're finished and then begin to handle the digital media again. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to handle tapes of 50 Shades of Grey or CDs of 50 Shades of Grey, because you know people don't wash their hands when they're finished.
ebooks.
Okay. Ebooks is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah. Yeah, some libraries
they're handling
e-books.
their own e-reader. That's fine. That's their grossness.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, if you want to criticize something, engage with it.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're talking about, shut the fuck up and sit the fuck down.
Okay.
I'll always my opinion.
I'll always refer to that old Stuart Lee line about book burnings. He was talking mainly about religious books, like, because there was this news story of group of Christians burning Qurans or something in America, and saying, I don't think your religious books should be burned. Not when there's hundreds of thousands of pristine copies of the Da Vinci Codes on bookshelves, on bookstore shelves. And
if you've read the Da Vinci Code, you understand that there's a reason he said that.
And I will say, I've read that book, and I kind of agree with Stuart Lee.
It is that bad. It's another one that deserves a stake.
Shit book.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's very lazy.
And my position on book burning is only in a life or death scenario. Like,
it's life or death. If I listen, do you really want to deal with me after I've read a book like 50 Shades of Grey? That is a life or death scenario. That's like asking me if I want coffee in the morning. Why are you asking?
Yeah. But anyways, let's get to shilling, shall we?
Cool.
Okay.
Who's going first?
Oh, I will. I suppose next week, Noodle and I will be back with Asterix. I think it's Asterix and the Chariot Race, I think, is the next one.
I
think. I'll double check that in a bit. At some point this week, hopefully if rings about. I want to bring back the wacky world of Twitter for a one-off, because I just noticed how much shit former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee's been tweeting out, and I feel he's kind of a worthy subject for one of those streams. So watch this space. Hopefully that will be. Hopefully I'll be able to do that at some point this week.
Yeah.
And that's about it for me, I think.
Cool. I have a few things to shill this week. First of all, this shirt and this pin were made by the fantastic Ravenstag Outfitters, who are a small, queer-owned and run business. I think they're based out of America, but don't quote me on that. And they make fandom merch and pro-ship merch. You can find them on Twitter at RavenstagO. Great t-shirt, very high quality, 100% cotton. You know, I'm sat here, it's red hot. I'm not really sweating all that much, you know, all that jazz. Give them some support, because they've been getting hell for putting these pink triangles on their merch. Fan cops apparently think these pink triangles don't belong to queer people when they've been reclaimed since the 70s. So do give them some support. Buy the merch if you want to. They have other stuff as well. Let me have a look here. Ignore that. They have stickers. and this is their logo, so you can see that. That's a sticker as well. They have stickers of the pro ship thing, and they do other stuff. They're mostly Hannibal, so one can grow to love beats, and obviously the Raven Stag is a Hannibal thing as well. And they have other pins, so have a look at them. Very good people, very nice. A very well run company that I have dealt with and can personally vouch for, obviously. Please support Archive of Our Own. I think they're still doing a drive for donations. They're very anti-censorship. They work with the Organisation for Transformative Works, and they do defend the rights of transformative works to exist. Very important. Also, any other anti-censorship charities or anything that you're aware of, please support them as well. I think that's an important thing to say at the end of this stream.
Yep. Any ones that are not like just right-wing lunatics, of course.
That are not right-wing lunatics, support your local banned book week, support your local library. These things matter, because that's how we get the information out there. Don't accept that the internet has to be controlled and everything else as well, because it doesn't necessarily. Read into things, look at things, educate yourself, and then make a decision. And engage critically when you do. From me personally, 2 things. My old fandom Twitter got suspended, which you probably noticed because I got harassed. I have now changed the app for that. I am not going to share that on this stream just because I got harassed yesterday, and I'm not sure how long this account's going to last either. So there's no point in shilling it at this point. Clumsy ring. Other than that, Asterix stream with Scummer next week, and all being well, Death Stranding or some other computer game I decide to play tomorrow whenever I tweet about it from my main Twitter, which you all know is Danger Hissy. So, yeah.
And next week and the week after, Noodle will actually be taking a bit more of a lead in the discussion, because next week on Media Musings, we are covering Into the Spider-Verse, which being about Miles Morales, a mixed-race Spider-Man, there will be race issues coming up.
I should point out that Ring hasn't actually told me this before now, and I haven't seen Into the Spider-Verse yet.
I was going to say, I'm hoping that is. It was on Netflix, and it was one of those things I'm hoping to get round to watching. I'm hoping it's still there.
Yeah, I'm going to have a look and find it and binge it this week.
Well, it's a movie.
It's a movie.
Cool. It's an animated movie.
Yeah.
Cool. If I remember right, it was like freaking snubbed for Best Animated Picture.
And most things are when they've got a mixed race protagonist. Ask me how I know.
Or it's comic book stuff.
Well, let me say, there's a reason Best Animated Picture is called the Disney Award.
Yeah.
It only goes to Disney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Marvel's in with a chance now, technically.
Oh, speaking of, another round is up for the Oscars on Best Foreign Language Film.
Woo.
And also, speaking about censorship in music, have a listen to the song from that. I listened to the song, the explicit version, and I was quite surprised they made that past the censors. Just as an aside, so do go and have a listen to that and support.
And of course, the reason we're doing Into the Spider-Verse next week is because next month is Marvel month, and we are kicking it off with Black Panther.
Awesome.
I currently have a Twitter poll up for the next few days about what will be following Black Panther, and if you happen to be a patron like the wonderful Santi the Sane, Geo Sam, Julie LaVoice, and Rain, you actually get a mirrored poll on the Patreon, which gets counted as double. So technically you get 3 votes if you're a patron.
say what remember, right? There we've got 4 that we're covering, haven't we? We've got Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep.
Right. The Black Panther, Doctor Strange, and the first Avengers movie, I think, which was just which is I just thought was the best one I could suggest at the time. That
and of course, since we're talking censorship, as always in September, I will be doing Lit Month in honor of Banned Book Week.
Yeah.
And secular D&D should be back on Saturday, same ring time, same ring channel.
Cool.
With that, taglines?
Just see you later, guys. Take care. Salute.
Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, use your noodle.
And remember, indoctrination is a hell of a selfie stick, so don't choke on it.